Welcome to the practice today. I've prepared 2 blocks today simply as supports. So you might want one to lean or sit upon. The other is really just to hold your legs. So it could be a cushion as well if you don't have 2 blocks, or you might use cushions in general. And then I've got my often used blanket there too. Nothing else is needed as far as I'm concerned, but if you have bolsters and things like that around, you might use those for relaxation. We will begin lying down on the backs today. So as you come to the mat, you could perhaps use the blanket underneath the head as a thin cushioning, and perhaps have your blocks or cushions nearby. And coming to lie down on the back with your feet on the ground or the mat. You might allow yourself just a few breaths in this shape, letting your body settle in. And you might like to start in a reclined bound angle pose, while I'm aware that oftentimes hip, knee, lower back issues prevent us from this shape. It is perfectly fine to stay as we are right now. If that is uncomfortable, feet wide and knees falling in for constructive rest. But if available to you, could you open the knees instead, touch the soles of the feet together, and let the knees fall out. Now, to get a deeper opening, you might bring your feet up quite high towards your body and let the knees roll out. If this works for you, you can always use your blocks in an angle stuck to your mat to support the legs. You could even, over the hold, widen that slightly if your body prompts you to do so. The other way is to bring the feet a little bit further away, especially if there is knee issues, and perhaps that works for you. Taking a note how the distance between your body and your feet might impact also the sensations in the lower back. So once you've found your leg position that's right for you, have a last wiggle through your shoulders and let your arms fall out to the sides. You might like to center your head on the cushioning or the mat, aligning your nose with your navel. While you might hold this position for a few minutes, you could choose to steady your gaze towards the ceiling or close your eyes. As you arrive here and now, notice how the body feels as it's prompted into a shape of your choice, of course. Perhaps then acknowledging how you are really feeling. As you land, more aware of yourself, I will reveal the topic for today, which is tapping a little bit deeper into our unconscious existence. And a passage from the sutras comes to mind here. It says, "The mindful actions of the higher path lead to contentment." There are many things that give us immediate gratification, are not good for us, and can cause long-term pain. We know this, but our lower nature can influence us to do them anyway. When we are overwhelmed, bored, lost, or don't know what to do, we might numb ourselves, zone out, switch off, keep scrolling, surge, and distract ourselves in many ways. Engage in mindful action and make choice that have long-term effects, not short-term thrills. This can be difficult when the pain associated with our good habits is felt in the present. For example, getting up at 6 to do yoga practice can be hard. The pain of leaving the comfort of the bed is quite immediate. And the potential benefit is somewhere in the future. The immediate pleasure can have consequences that only manifest in the future. So perhaps as you look into your practice today, this time that you set your alarm to get to the practice perhaps, or the effort you needed to make. It is our distractions that are in the end challenging us. So perhaps noticing how distractions arise during this practice, coming in many forms, even as desires and aversions. Ultimately, tapping into our intuition, into our higher self to assist us with the practice. While you're resting here, you could now engage in a pranayama or breathing practice where you might feel into a longer exhalation. And then try and have the in-breath in the same length as your exhalation was. You might choose to count this breath and exhaling for 4. Then breathing in for 4. If the count isn't yours, change it to your needs, but keeping the length of inhalation and exhalation perhaps the same. As you breathe in the same length, whether you choose to count or feel into it, noticing any desires to let that be a certain way and rather choose to explore it. If generally holding your breath feels good, the technique, by the way, completed as Samavriti 1, you might allow to hold the breath. Not yours, refrain from it, stay with Samavriti 1, same length for in and out breath. If you're okay to hold the breath, you might, after your next inhalation, pause the breath also for a count of 4. Not right, notice the count that does feel right. Then breathe out for your count of 4 or same length as the in-breath. And then explore the hold after the exhalation. Let that be the same length as the hold after the inhalation. And adjusting that to your personal needs. You might now have a breath that is in for 4, that holds for 4, where you breathe out for 4 and hold for 4 again. This might not be you. You might have different lengths, but either side of your boxes are the same length. You might visualize even the box. Perhaps you're breathing in for 4, pausing for 4, breathing out for 4, holding for 4. While you might visualize the box, breathing in on one side, holding across, breathing out the other side, and holding to come back across. You might repeat your personally designed box breath for a little bit longer, acknowledging each time you breathe, each time you hold, holds the same length, and the breaths themselves the same length. Perhaps all four components, sides of the box, the same length. The box can also be your tool to keep you with this practice. Let your whole mind partake. Your breath be within reason, no strain or stress. Finishing your breathing technique at the end of your next exhalation. No hold here. And continue breathing naturally afterwards. If your legs are still in the same position, knees falling outward, remain like this. However, if you do have, for example, a bolster underneath your knees, please remove that. Blocks are still fine to have. If you are on blocks, remove the left one now and extend the left leg out long. Begin to flex the foot, and perhaps the sole of the right foot attaches very gently to the inside of the leg for a reclined tree position. On the in-breath then, reaching your arms out into branches, or perhaps even over the head for a crown. Take a full breath while you hold. Then take another inhalation. And as you breathe out, circle your arms back around to the sides of the body. Let the other block relax to the floor and bring your right knee up towards your chest. Give that a good hug and a squeeze in. Perhaps pause here for a moment. You might choose to change your hold to behind your thigh. Take a breath in as you're extending your leg up the heel, leading that extension. And on the out breath, bending the knee and hugging the knee in towards the chest. We'll do that again. Breathing in, the heel extends upward for a long leg. And bending the knee on the out breath to draw it inwards. Repeat that for another 3 breaths. You can hold your leg as close or as far away as suits. With the last round, you might choose on that out breath where the knee hugs in to also raise your nose up towards the knee. Then land your upper body back down, holding the knee hug to the chest. Release your hands, but keep the opposite hand then on the knee, and the right arm gently falls out like a branch. On the next out breath, carefully guide this knee across the body. Just rolling, see where it goes effortlessly while the shoulder is still on the floor. And you might add an ever so slight rocking movement, or could choose to hold it steady. And while you've got blocks there, you could also support the leg if that is your version. Perhaps your head rolls to one side, whichever one that might be. Centering your head. Release as you roll onto the back. You might bring your block back under the knee as you let it roll back out to the side. Bending the other knee, perhaps the block enters here too, and touching the soles of the feet together. Returning to Supta Baddha Konasana, the reclined bound angle pose, and a deep breath in and out here. Then perhaps releasing the block underneath the right leg and extending it out long onto the mat while flexing its foot. Perhaps the sole of the other foot attaches here to the inside of the leg. In your reclined tree, the option on the next in-breath to circle your arms out. Maybe rest them as branches, or bring even the hands to touch over the head to build a crown. Holding here in that slightly extended version of a reclined tree shape. On your next exhalation, circling your arms back around to the sides, letting your block roll over and hugging your knee in towards the chest, left side this time. While you hold your knee tight, you might choose to change the hold to behind your thigh, flexing the foot, and with the inhalation, extending the leg leading from the heel of the foot. With the exhalation, hug the knee in towards your chest. Breathing in, extending the leg from the heel. Breathing out to hug the knee to the chest. You might like to repeat that for 3 more breaths. As you're on your last round, could raise your nose up towards the knee. Then relax your head and upper back to the floor. Letting go of the leg, but taking a hold with the opposite hand. Left arm might fall out like a branch, and carefully guiding this knee across the body. You have again the choice of just rocking a little bit in and out to see where this twist might go, or you could choose to hold it, perhaps even using again a block underneath. As you land in your twist, there's the option of turning the head to one side. As you gently roll again onto your back, landing the foot, letting your knee fall out once more, only for a brief hold, but if you like, the second leg joins in, blocks underneath, and finding your branches again. Taking a deep breath in as you reach with your hands towards your knees, and a breath out to guide the knees upwards. Wiggling your feet now out to mat distance and allowing knees to fall inwards. From there, heel and toe the feet to about hip distance and slide them gently up towards your buttocks, turning your toes to face forward and extending the arms along the sides of the body, the palms now touching the mat. While breathing in, tilt the pelvis, the spine becomes flat on the floor. Breathing out, squeezing into the buttocks and starting to lift the hips up for a bridge. On the inhale, draw your tailbone up towards your knees to extend the bridge further. And on the out breath, rolling your spine back down towards the floor. So a slower approach today. On the inhale, tilt to flatten the spine to the mat. The exhale to squeeze your hips up into the air. The inhale to draw the tail up to the knees. The out breath to roll the spine slowly back down onto the floor. We'll repeat that again. On the inhale, create a tilt to flatten. The out breath to squeeze your hips up. The inhale to lengthen tail towards the knees. Out breath to hold this time. Option to stay right here or use the next inhale to lift your arms to ceiling or even behind the head onto the floor. Allowing yourself a deep, full extension in the bridge if that is for you. Keep drawing your tail up towards the knees so hips remain high. Breathe in to stretch back towards your fingertips and then out to slowly release your arms so they're returning back down towards the sides of the body. Next out breath, slowly rolling your spine back down towards the mat. You might now bring both knees up towards the chest and hug them in evenly. It could feel nice to add a little rocking across the back, be that just the lower back or be that your whole back. You might take a hold now behind your thighs, flex your feet, and take a breath in to extend both legs up, leading with the heels of your feet. Then point them as you breathe out to draw the knees back to the chest. Flex the feet, breathing in to extend up toward the ceiling with your heels leading. Pointing as you breathe out to draw back in. Repeating here as well, 3 more breaths. And with the last round, the same option as well. When you breathe out, the knees come in, your nose might lift up towards the knees. You could then release your body back down and either roll onto your side, which I might choose, or rocking forward and backwards to come into a seated position. Placing your feet down at about hip distance apart, your hands landing behind you. You might allow your hands to be flat, the fingers pointing forward, or you could choose to step up onto fists and then the thumbs are pointing forward. If this is a bit much for shoulders or else, you could stay right here, squeeze your shoulder blades, lift your gaze, perhaps the chin, or even guiding the head back for another back bend. Or if you're with me, you might squeeze your hips up, lifting them for a tabletop. While gaze could remain forward, you could do the same, guided by the chin lifting, bringing the head back. Take another breath. Then breathing out and very slowly landing down onto the mat. While you might allow your knees to fall back out to either side and bringing the soles of the feet together again. I will demonstrate that with the support of blocks, you might do the same according to your experience lying down. You could choose to take a hold here of your ankles, draw yourself up that little bit longer and decide where do you want your feet to be, closer, further away from you, what is right for you here. With this length in the spine, create a little wiggle as you breathe out and move forward. Some of you or us might even embrace the toes. You might choose to lower your upper body, and even though you might have a support underneath your knees, perhaps lowering that if it feels right, getting a deeper opening. And if you find the hold makes you feel kind of stuck, perhaps moving slightly, exploring, how does that feel? Guiding yourself through this practice despite my instructions in the way that your intuition allows you to. Tapping into a deeper understanding within yourself. On your next breath in, lengthen your spine and slowly rising back to a seat, perhaps removing the support, placing that over to the side, maybe lifting the knees up from there, stepping the feet out wide, hands might rest behind as you could drop the knees back together, exploring the movement here in the pelvic area and your hips. Separating the knees lightly, and perhaps a subtle windscreen wiper movement, and for some it might even be a little bit bigger. The same here, rather than looking for a particular outcome, an attachment that might exist within your practice, explore, let it move, and explore what happens. You could then bring your feet over to one side and join me in a standing position, perhaps short front edge of your mat. Please do align your feet with the outer edges parallel, whether that's hip distance or big toes together. Turn the palms of the hands forward as we start tall in a mountain shape. Inner heels are drawing lightly inwards to give you support. On the breath in, could you raise your arms, maybe even lift your gaze. Soften your knees, and as you breathe out, bring the hands down the midline to fold forward, Uttanasana. Fingertips to floor, block, or shins, half lift on the in-breath. On the out-breath, stepping your right foot back, your hands either side of the foot, the leg long, the spine long, front hip lightly drawing back. Runner's lunge. Landing the hands down, maybe also the knee, your choice here, or fours, or downward facing dog. On the breath in, then rolling the spine forward. Perhaps it's a kneeling or a full plank you come to. With the out breath, elbows are close, coming to land on the front of the body, untucking the toes. On the inhale, bring the tops of the feet to the floor, lift the head in the chest, draw shoulder blades down the spine, Bhujangasana, Cobra pose. On the out breath, release the floor, back to the floor. Inhaling as you come onto hands and knees, you might tuck the toes under and stretch your hips up and back for puppy before either choosing an all-four stance or returning to downward facing dog. Now, whichever one you have chosen, create some movement. Down dog, naturally, you might start walking out your legs and arms. All fours, you might move randomly, finding places that need a bit of motion. Then center yourself. On the next inhalation, let your right leg extend backwards. On the out breath, bring the knee in towards the chest, helping or landing your right foot forward. Hands either side of the foot, back toes might tuck under, lifting the knee off the floor, finding your runner's lunge, breathing in. On the exhale, step to the front, forward fold. Inhaling, half lift. Exhaling, forward bend. Bend your knees and push the floor away. Rise straight up to your extended pose. And let your arms drift back out, returning to the mountain. Inner heels squeeze, body is tall. Next, inhale, lifting the arms again. Hands might touch, knees could soften, rolling down from the midline. Inhaling, half lift. Exhaling, stepping the left foot back. Again, keep your hands framing the foot. Draw the front hip lightly back, leg and spine a long runner's lunge. Inhale. Landing the hands down, maybe the knee too, or stepping the foot back, downward facing dog. On the inhale, let's all roll the spine forward, finding a kneeling or full plank. Exhale, elbows by your sides, lowering to the mat. Untuck your toes, engage into the tops of the feet, a breath in for a cobra of your choice. An out breath to lower again. And inhale, as you might rise to all four, same option, see it straight to down dog, or perhaps there's a puppy. Maybe then an all four stance or the down dog anyway. As you set yourself up, a breath in, the left leg is extending back. On the out breath, bring the knee forward, helping or landing the foot between the hands. Coming to fingertips. You might lift the back knee off the floor. Runner's lunge again, breathing in. On the out breath, step it forward, forward fold. Inhaling, half lift. Exhaling, bending again. Bend your knees, use your feet, and come to rise. Arms might extend. On the out breath, returning again. Mountain pose. Inner heels drawing in as you stand tall, shoulders easy, arms active right down to the fingertips. On the breath in, lifting your arms once more. Soften your knees and draw the hands back down the midline as you fold forward, Uttanasana. Another half lift on the breath in, and then stepping the right foot back once more. Feel free to have the back knee on the floor or off the mat, your choice. As you take a breath in, you might extend your left arm. A bit much for the shoulder, bring the hand into the side of the waist instead. Drawing your front hip lightly backwards, perhaps becoming lighter on the floor, twisted lunge. Releasing the hand towards the thigh and lowering your back knee down onto the floor. Reaching the right arm forward as you take a breath in, lifting it all the way. On the out breath, circle the hand now into your lower back. Let fingers point down. Hips remain forward as you might lift your heart or even the other arm, perhaps looking in towards the hand upwards, but there could be a slight chin tuck here. Inhaling. On the exhale, releasing your hands back down towards the floor. Now bring your left knee out towards the side, the edge of the mat. Let the right leg extend backwards and perhaps landing onto the forearms. With your left knee bent out to the side, optional, otherwise extending that leg too. Finding here a swings variation. So the heart is reaching forward while you might have your left knee bend up towards your shoulder. We call that a chameleon pose. On your next out, by sliding your left leg out long, letting your elbows spread out and landing your forehead onto your hands. You might have a little wiggle here across your pelvis. You could from there extend your right arm out long and bring your left arm along the side of the body. Next option, bending the left knee. If you can reach, you might take a hold of the foot or the ankle. Only an option if your knees are remaining parallel. Ground through the foot, the hand, perhaps lift the knee or the arm by your side or bring the foot into the hand. Head and chest lightly lifting again, half bow pose. See if you can level the lift off the chest by grounding more through your straight side. Then release it all as you breathe out, lowering the forehead to the mat. Slide your hands now underneath your shoulders. Take a breath in to guide yourself up onto the hands and the knees. And you might bring your knees out wide, touch your big toes, and reach your bottom down to the heels as you could land on the forehead, on the forearms, and find some ease, but perhaps also another movement through the pelvic and lower back area. Adho Mukha Virasana, downward facing hero. As you bring your hands back down, walking the hands up towards the knees, bringing the knees in, tucking the toes under, lift the knees off the floor, lower the heels to the ground, and come to a standing forward bend. Uncurling the spine as you breathe out. Give the shoulders a lift and a shrug back. And then taking deliberate steps, landing each foot towards the front side end of your mat. Where you might turn your palms back out and return to Tadasana or mountain shape. On your next in-breath, lifting the arms again. Touch the palms, soften the knees, draw the hands down to the midline and fold forward. And inhale for a half lift. The exhale to step the left foot down the mat, option knee to the floor. As you draw the front hip lightly back, aligning your strength, you might choose to take a breath in to extend your right arm up. Returning perhaps to the twisted lunge, keep the front hip lightly drawing back and aim to be as light as possible in the fingertips on the floor. Upper arm might reach to the front thigh. Back knee might come to touch the floor. On a breath in, could you reach your left arm forward, perhaps lift it all the way, and on the out breath, circling it behind to rest it into the lower back, fingers pointing down. Take a note that your hips are still facing forward before you might lift your heart, perhaps even the hand from the thigh, and reach it up for another half camel shape. Breathing in here. On the out breath, releasing both hands back down onto the floor. Untuck the back toes. Bring the front knee to rest to the edge of the mat. Then perhaps sliding your left leg out, not yours, both legs would be long behind you. And perhaps lowering, if you're with me, onto the forearms. Keeping your knee out towards the side, if that is doable for you. Using your arms to lift your heart, and perhaps your gaze comes forward too. You might stay here for a few breaths, supporting a slight opening again into the hip if the knee is out, If not, we're resting in the back bend anyway. While you might begin to slide your knee back, let your elbows spread out, stack the hands the other way, let your forehead land on your hands, perhaps moving through the lower part of the body. You might now extend your left arm forward and perhaps the right arm lengthens down by the side. Option to bend the right knee. This might be it for you, or you could try and reach for the foot behind you. If it's available, your left arm is long, you're grounding through the hand, through the top of the foot, and either aiming to lift the leg and the arm or bringing the foot back into the hand. Extend yourself, but also ground and try and level the chest out for half the asana on the other side. On the out breath, release your leg, lower the upper body, hands underneath the shoulders. For the inhale, come up onto the hands and knees. Again, you could come to the downward facing hero, opening your knees out, or you might choose a frog pose instead as you turn your toes outward and align your ankles roughly with your knees. We will then do the same, reaching the hips backwards, resting onto the forearms or onto the forehead. Please allow shoulders here to be easy, and perhaps there is a hip stretch. Maybe the big toes are together. There's still a hip opening, but slightly more relaxed. Keeping your forearms now down, lift your hips back up, draw your knees back into about hip distance, maybe your arms a little bit forward so you're feeling like you're on all fours but on the forearms. Tucking the toes under, and either your hands stay touching the floor or you could interlace them. Then lifting your hips up and back for a baby dolphin shape. If you feel more like a full dolphin, could you lift your knees off the floor and still stretch your hips up and back? Perhaps that's a full dolphin. Feel the length of the spine, similar to that of a downward facing dog. The extension that comes through the shoulders if you choose that shape. As you breathe in and out, acknowledge the natural curve of your spine, the extension that comes through. If your knees are off the mat, please lower them again. Keep the toes tucked under as you slide your forearms back towards your knees. You might even be brave to step up onto the hands or even come all the way to sit upon your tucked under toes. A tiny little toe sit where you might draw your little toes into the game as well. Resting the hands back down, lifting the knees back up, lowering the heels towards the mat as you return to a standing forward fold. Long, slow out breath now to uncurl the spine back to a stand. Lifting your shoulders as you breathe in. Shrug them down and come to mountain pose at the end of the mat. Inner heels might draw back inwards. Please make sure that you've got a little bit of space behind you while I will turn towards you. You can stay the same. Shifting your weight towards your left foot now, finding a solid gazing point ahead or down in front. Bending your right knee so your knees are touching, a bit like a flamingo. You could choose to take a hold of your foot and bring your knees back to touch. You might lift your arm up, perhaps touching index and thumb together. A breath in as you might lift the knee behind and your heart forward, or bring the foot into the hand and come back to the half bow pose. Only in a balance, so it now becomes a dancer. Lots of different options for you to choose from. Take one more breath there. And with the out breath, release it slowly and with grace, or landing with a thud to protect yourself from falling. As you might open the palms again, squeeze your inner heels and return to the steadiness, the comfort of a mountain. Being playful as you might shift your weight now to the right foot. We'll start in the same way, bending the left knee and leaving your knees touching, and this is your first option. Even big toe to the floor might be another. You could try and reach for the foot, but not essential. If you do touch the foot, bring the knees back together. You might from here lift your other arm, perhaps index and thumb come to touch. You could, on your next in-breath, raise the knee behind you, bring the foot into the hand if that's you, and lift your heart forward. Keep yourself open rather than collapsing. You might even dare to smile at the screen. One more breath. And then releasing your arm, releasing your foot, and returning back into the mountain. Inner heels drawing in. You might choose to close your eyes, relax all of your toes, but keep your inner heels active. Relax the belly while you breathe in and take the breath all the way up through the ribs to the collarbones. Then have a sigh. On the inhale, lifting your arms again. Touch the palms, soften your knees, and slowly roll down to a forward fold. On the in-breath, there's a half lift. On the out-breath, coming to lower down towards a seat. Now, I will use a support for the seat. This is a very folded blanket for me, and you could have some support underneath your sitting bones as well, taking your legs out wide. However, hip issues, sometimes it's better to have them a little bit closer. No hip issues, take them out as wide as they can more or less comfortably go. Turn the toes up towards the ceiling. If you like, you can bend the knees or leave the legs long. I suggest to bring the hands a little bit behind yourself and push them into the floor with the fingertips, lengthening through the spine. You might use the hands there as a support. They could walk while you sway your way forward. With the hands behind you, you might be able to keep your spine long, the shoulder blades down the back. No expectations, but perhaps closing your eyes. If you enjoy using your fingertips behind to guide you forward, keep them there. If you prefer your hands to the front or would like to try, you could do that too. See where it takes you. If you want to keep your spine long, good idea. Or maybe rounding forward, getting a little bit deeper, perhaps into the legs. Movement here is welcome too, or choosing to hold. Shoulders easy, taking a few breaths. What part of you is making decisions in this practice? As there were many options already during our postural practice standing. Did you decide from logical mind? Did you tap a little bit deeper? Allowing perhaps even your body to talk to you. Taking notes if what you intended to do with the mind has not occurred quite yet, and perhaps give it another chance. Walking your hands back up towards you as you lift up through your spine. Taking your feet and bringing them back upon the mat. I will remove my sitting support and make it back into a little cushion. Turning myself, because you might still be facing the mat, and rolling your back down onto the floor if you're ready for it. Leaving knees bent and landing your feet softly onto the ground. You could now choose to extend your right leg up on a breath in and land your ankle to the left thigh on the breath out, opening your knee out. Keep a flexion here in the foot, and perhaps the hand goes to the knee, and encourage the knee to move out and away from you. Some of you might like to take this deeper by bringing your arm through between the legs and lifting the foot, hugging the legs in. You could then use your elbow to keep guiding your knee out, but keep your foot in a flexion. Finding your pose to hold, and even if it is with both feet on the floor, acknowledging what your needs are at this point. Then landing your left foot back down to the mat, while you could choose to open your arms. And on the out breath, let your legs roll towards the right. Whether the foot is still up there is your decision. You might as well bring the foot to the floor if that feels better. You could choose to turn your gaze. Let shoulders be soft. And take a few breaths. If your foot is still up there, lower it to the floor. Let your head and then your knees come back to center. You might enjoy changing sides, left leg extending on the in-breath, bending the knee as the ankle lands to the thigh on the out-breath. As your knee opens, keep a flexion in the foot, and perhaps use your left hand to guide your knee to an open space. You could stay here or reach your arm through between the legs, picking up the foot and holding onto the opposite leg. Elbow might guide the knee out, maintain flexion in the foot. You could now land your right foot back down onto the floor, opening your arms while you breathe in, and perhaps leave the ankle on the thigh while you breathe out to let knees roll to the left. Same here, both feet could be grounded, and you might decide to turn the head to one side. Then taking a few breaths. As you could choose to land your foot to the floor, center the head, then bringing your knees back up. You might leave your arms there and add a little swing into the legs to find ease and perhaps to align your body. However you might feel this is right for you, settling in for a Shavasana, your resting pose. If you prefer constructive rest, take your feet wide, your knees falling in. If you like a full Shavasana, maybe a bolster underneath the knees, or your legs extending and letting them roll out. Find comfort. Take as many movements as you might require to find a bit of ease in your lying, reclined position. Perhaps reflecting on the practice so far. It can be difficult to dismiss the pleasures of the moment, to forestall future pain. This sutra asks you to commit to a path that will benefit you in the long run and avoid doing things that you know will hold you back. With practice, you will condition yourself to a more empowered way of being. As you might acknowledge this higher part of yourself. Sometimes we keep it within ourselves, rather going with the logical mind, knowing that the mat is a very safe space to practice living. Perhaps allowing yourself to tap a layer deeper, to notice what it is that is truly yours. Allowing yourself perhaps to be present as you are. Each time the mind drifts away from this idea is just another opportunity to learn. To learn, where does this mind go? How can I be of greater benefit to myself? If you have your arms resting out towards your sides, keep them like this. If you don't, but it's available to you, let your arms open. Keeping your body aligned in this restful state, touch your thumb to your index finger on each hand. Feel into the loop of the energy. Then release that touch and instead bring your thumb to touch the tip of the middle finger, feeling into the energy created here. Releasing the middle finger and instead touching the tip of the thumb to that of the ring finger. Tapping into the loop you created now. Releasing the ring finger and instead touching the tips of thumb and little finger. Again, feel into the loop you created with your fingers. Perhaps there was one finger as you release your little finger that felt particularly good for you today. Touch that fingertip once more. You might even return to the touch of these two fingers together throughout your day. As you release it now, begin to wiggle your fingers, start deepening your breath. As you might start to move or even stretch yourself out long. To then start your way toward a seated position in which you might like to join me. If right for you, bring the palms of the hands to touch in front, perhaps attaching the thumbs towards the sternum or the heart. Either lower your gaze or close the eyes and feel long in your spine again, right up to the crown of the head. We will complete our practice today with the universal sound of Om, followed by 3 shantis for peace. Breathing in together now. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Gently bowing to extend toward each other. Namaste.